looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAlanRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, AlanRoberts.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad, so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
The chat is acting weird tonight, you say? I got to look at that. What's it doing, folks? Hey, good evening. Welcome to the show. Happy Thursday evening. This is Scotty Roberts, your host here on the Intrepid radio program. You can see us over live on, what am I saying? I do this by rote every day. It just spills off my tongue. And if I have one mental hiccup in the middle of it, I screw it all up. It unravels. It falls apart. So we are broadcasting on the Odyssey Radio Network, ODYSY1.com. Come on over, see all the goodness that's Odyssey Radio. And you can take a look at their schedule. You can see all the times during the day that they repeat these broadcasts over there on Odyssey Radio. That's what makes this a radio show, is Odyssey. And we're not on there live with this show tonight. But as I keep saying, and I keep saying things over the months, and I eventually do them and get them done, and we get them working and up and running. But we're just working on the tech. Not actively working. It's sitting in the wings, waiting to get all the tech put together so we can broadcast live over on Odyssey Radio, do the live audio stream along with the live video stream at Odyssey, and also at the same time a live video stream here on our YouTube channel. And that's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts for all those in the future that might be seeing this in archive, knowing where this channel is. And if you look down below the screen that's right over here, you're going to see the join button. You can click on that join button, and for $2, $5, $15 a month, automatically taken out of your card or your PayPal or whatever, you can join this channel. And the show, always free to everyone. But if you want to contribute to the show, help us keep things afloat over here financially, you are welcome to do that by joining the channel. If you like the channel and you want to do that, go right ahead. And I realize not everybody can do that, and that's okay. If you gave $2 to $5 every month to everything that you liked and pursued, you'd be broke by the end of the month. So I get it. So there it is. It's there if you want to do it, and I appreciate those of you who already do. Thank you very much. And so welcome to the show this Thursday night. It's not Friday yet, but it's getting there. And, as I've said before, I work for myself. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, doesn't matter much. Friday's the end of the week. Yeah, it's the end of the week. But my work goes on. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whenever I do it. And so I hope for you, though, it's offering you some respite from the week behind you. And Wesley over there camped out by the Ohio River, feeding the raccoons, and hopefully not the bears, and hopefully not crocodiles up there on the Ohio River. Welcome to the show tonight. And Teresa Dantone, welcome to you tonight. And Matthew Sainsbury from way down south. So down south, you're down south of the Gulf of Mexico. And so welcome. I think you're south. Where'd you say? I keep asking you this. You're Barbados or something like that. So that would be not south of the Gulf of Mexico. That'd be east of the Gulf of Mexico. But whatever. Texas Joe, welcome. Good to see you in the show tonight. And Matt Finn, Master Finn. Saw you earlier. Glad that you're here tonight as well, brother. Susie Q, good to see you as well. And who else has wandered in at the very early wee moments of this show? So I want Delaney Pearl Jones. There you are. Thanks for coming. Good to see you. Those of you hanging out there in the wings, those of you listening at Odyssey Radio, which we'll never see your faces over here. But I want to thank you all for listening and everybody who joins this broadcast. I appreciate it. It means a lot to me that you'd spend your time with me. You're in my time. So Rainey is here. She would come in and say hello this evening, but her mom is over and they went and bought fireworks. So all the kids are out there in the waning sunlight outside here, 9:08 p.m. in Wisconsin. They're out front lighting off fireworks and smoke bombs out on the street. My public nuisance children. So, yeah, we're those neighbors. And so we went and looked at a house today, by the way. Not one we're going to buy. We're going to have to probably rent a house. We've got to be moved out of this one by the end of August due to the fact that they're selling all of these and they discontinued everybody's leases. And the price they're asking for these is way out of line. It's exactly what you might think for the market as it exists today. This house that we live in, which is too small for us already, it's a side-by-side townhome. So that's really a glorified apartment. We've just got this wall behind me, the width of the house. There's another family on the other side. Woman with 4 boys. And I will say, we never hear them. So they're pretty quiet people for being a single mom with 4 kids. But it's all younger than our kids. And but they want $440,000 to buy these 2 homes side by side. $230,000 to buy this one, which doesn't seem so out of line when you're thinking of buying a house. $230,000 is not so bad, except you have very little yard. We've got a big yard because we sit on the corner, but remember, it's built up off the corner. We're like on this hill on the corner overlooking everything, and everything's sloped. So mowing the grass, you're, this level. And if this were my place, I would level that all off. I'd landscape it, build some retaining walls. If I wanted to spend that kind of money, I'd buy both sides of this. I'd be knocking this wall out and some other walls upstairs and stuff, and we'd convert it all into a single family dwelling. So that might be nice. But so all that to say, we have till the end of August, which is the end of our lease here, to vacate this place and find something new. We had wanted to build a house this summer. That's not going to happen yet. We could maybe buy a house, but time is running out with all that pre-approval stuff. You have to get through the mortgage company and all of that stuff. So we're probably just going to rent for another year. We did go look at a beautiful house. It sits on 3 acres. There's a big pond out back. It's got willow trees and old growth trees in the yard. It's in the country. Same school district, which is nice. A house that's almost twice this size. It only costs us a few $100 more a month than it would here. So we're just waiting to hear. We got there. We went and looked at the place, and then he said, well, we're still trying to decide if we're going to sell it outright, which would be a pretty spendy house, or if we're going to rent it. So if he rents it, we'll know in another day or so, and hopefully get that house. That'd be nice. I hate moving. Do you like moving? Anybody out there enjoy the act of moving? Enjoy the act of putting all your belongings together in boxes and tubs, loading them onto a truck, and driving that truck to one place. If that truck goes off the bridge into the river, there goes my whole life, everything about it, all the material goods of our life stacked together. Let's see. What about a land contract, says Matt Finn. Yeah, I do a land contract. I told this guy, I said, if you're going to sell that house or this one, I haven't talked to them here about a land contract. I suppose it's a possibility. We've been in land contracts before. The house we lost with the 4 acres and the woods and all the ponds in the forest. And it was a little over 4 acres, a little bigger than this house, a little smaller than the one we're looking at. We lost it. That's the one that went away 3 years ago in April, and for various reasons. And I've told that sordid tale before. We shall not cover it again tonight. But we were on a land contract with that one. And that didn't work out so well in our favor, especially in Wisconsin. Wisconsin is a ownership rights state, which is great for the owners. But if you are a tenant or somebody who's renting or somebody on the other end of a land contract, you could get screwed pretty fast, hard, and easy. So with your eyes closed. So we're going to be careful next time we enter into a land contract in Wisconsin. So, and we don't want to move back to the city, Minneapolis and St. Paul. That's across the border. We'd be changing back to Minnesota. Not our thing. Let's see. Teresa Danto says, good grief, Captain. Don't even think that way. I don't know which one you're referring to. Now, by the way, you folks were all saying that there's something up with the chat room tonight. You say it's in a slow mode. Is that something that we can change? Moderators, can you go in there and change that? Matt Finn, Susie Q, I don't know if you guys have the ability to go in and do that or not. Otherwise, I'll have to see what it's doing. So, yeah, I hate moving. Moving is stressful, says Matthew Sainsbury. I don't like moving, Morgan Snow, because we are about as mobile as the state of Texas, as I like to say. Take the state of Texas and put it in a truck, and you've got us. Maybe driving the state of Texas in a truck wouldn't be so bad. It's packing it all up, cataloging it, marking it, putting it in tubs and boxes, taping it together, and then moving it. Oh, fast, hard, and easy with eyes closed. Sounds like my baking attempts. I thought you were going to get sexual on us there, Teresa. I was going to go, is that what happens in the Teresa house? So anyway, moderators, if you have the ability to change what's going on in the chat room, please take a look at it. And so here we are. So how y'all doing tonight? What's going on? Anybody got anything interesting? Oh, by the way, before I move forward, why don't I put up a link to the show? If you're out there and you would like to see, I got to look around my microphone to see my screen. Even though my screen is huge, my screen's about this big. I have to look around the microphone to get at it. So here it is, folks. Link to tonight's show. And, you know, I've never really looked to see if it's the same link every night. I don't think it is, but I'm not positive of that. Boom, there it is. That's how you get into the studio. You hit that link. It'll bring you up in the studio, and you'll just have to sit and wait there till I see you and recognize you and say, you, come on in. And so if there's anything about tonight's show you want to talk about or any topics you want to talk about, generally you'll sit there longer unannounced or unrecognized if I'm in the midst of a big topic and you pop in. You might have to wait till I get to you. So there it is. That's the link. And yeah, I think it appeared. Yep, there it is. You just click on that and come on in. I was thinking about it, said Teresa. Almost 61, but I can still rock it. Boom! Yeah, I'm almost 61 too. And also as well, I should say. And so I can rock it too. And my lovely young wife, kids won't agree with me. My young wife at 41 keeps me interested. We'll leave it there. So, Steph, how you doing? She said, I'll be listening. Got earbuds in. I'm off on my iron horse. Potato. And so, Steph, good to have you in here tonight. Glad you're here. And Morgan Snow, I didn't properly say hello, but welcome to the show tonight. So, folks, we're going to continue talking about the gods of Egypt, the mythology of Egypt. And to me, this is a really interesting topic. I didn't want to just make this a trite, let's list the gods and talk about the gods of Egypt and say, this is what this god did, and this is what this god did. And but we'll do some of that. But I want to talk about why the Egyptians did what they did, why they named their gods what they named them, why they gave them the attributes they gave them. And it's all pretty interesting stuff. And you have to, I've mentioned them a couple of times in passing, the Ogdoad. We're going to talk about them a little bit tonight. Who were the Ogdoad and why are they important? And Ogdoad isn't solely an Egyptian thing, even though that's where I first learned about the Ogdoad. It comes through Gnosticism, and it really had its rise in Gnosticism a couple thousand years ago. And so we're gonna talk about that a little bit tonight. But last night we kind of left off. We were talking about this whole thing of the origins of Egyptian myth, the origins of Egyptian deities, and how they came about and started creating those mythologies and those deities. And we talked about the content and the meaning of all of this as they started really putting this together. And it was an evolution of their belief system. So what they had. Remember when we talked on a series, we were talking about gods, and we were talking about people's relationship to God and the evolution of that relationship to God. You can see as you go back like 4000 BCE that people's relationship to the divine or to a deity was really wrapped around what they created those or saw those deities as being: the god of the mountain, the god of the thunder, the god of the sky, the god of the ocean, the god of the earth, the god of the sun and the moon and the stars, and so on. They were entities. They were things that represented the things you could see and the things that you experienced. And as the millennia dragged on, the 3000s BCE, you started to see that shift to the god was a god that became a god who was who manifested in the royalty, in the leaders, in the king. And it was the king or even the queen. You saw the attributes of God become an attribute of a great ruler, someone who had the sovereignty over us. And then you saw that morph down as you get closer and closer to the flipping of the millennia down to the time of Christ. I don't think Christ was the reason for this. I think he was an outcome of this, is that man started to see God more and more in that last millennia BCE into the first millennia AD or CE, the Common Era. You see that mankind started to see God as a God that could be a personal God, not just the God of the thing, the object, the place, the holiness. Remove the sandals from thy feet, for the place whereon thou standest is holy ground. So said Charlton Heston as the voice of God in the Ten Commandments. And so you started to see this more personal God. And so as you see this development of who God was and how humans reacted to God, that always raised for me a question. Was God, as the Bible told us and we were taught, the same yesterday, today, and forever? And that a moment is as 1,000 years with God, and vice versa. Was God this being that transcended all of this? Why did he seemingly change for us as we changed our view of God? What's our view of God today? What have we morphed into 2,000 years after the time of Christ? God is still the God of open arms, the God that takes you in. That was one of the very moving things about the church when I was in it, and what I was teaching when I was in ministry, what I taught the youth. And we had our biblical passages for backing this up, that God was that great, as it said in the Aramaic in the New Testament, the great Abba Father, the daddy Father, the daddy God, the God who represented that crawl up into my lap, I'm your daddy, and I will love you and care for you and teach you and guide you type of God. That was the New Testament God. Excuse me. It was the God that lovingly put his arms around you when you thought you had gone too far. The God that forgave you your sins. The God that would say, I remember when I worked a little bit with youth, and I was in men's ministries in a church 25 years ago, where my friend Parson Larson, as I called him, was the pastor of that church, a church that focused on ministering to people and to broken people. It was no longer, you come to God no matter who you are and what you are, and you bend your knee to God the sovereign, the King God. It was the God that was, God is here with open arms to take you as you are. Come to him, let him cradle you in his arms. And that's the kind of ministry we had in that church. That's who God was to us. And I remember when I questioned some things, and I was talking to Parson Larson, and I was questioning the nature of God, the attributes of God. Who is God really? And I had really drifted way far away. And I said, does he even exist the way we think he does? And he surprised me and said, Scotty, you might be right about God. Maybe he is those things. He said, but the thing that we're getting at in our ministry, he says, we present God as the God that loves you, the God that takes you on, the God that cares for you, the God that supplies your needs. And I thought that was interesting. I thought that is not out of the nature of the New Testament God, but at the same time, it was so different from the God of the Old Testament. So, bringing this all back and starting to look at the way this evolved into being in ancient Egypt, the same thing happened. They were going through these same stages of how man reacted to the divine, to a divinity. The divinity were detached and they were far away. And there was a point where even in Egyptian history, the gods became closer. The gods were the gods that loved you, that you put your cares into. And so that's the way it was. Now I'm looking at some of your comments. I didn't see any of that after reading the Old Testament, said Ryan Gale. What are you talking about, Ryan? This love of God, this put my arms around you type of God. No, that didn't hit us in the Bible until the New Testament. That's where you started to see this, was in the New Testament era. And keep in mind that the Old Testament really concluded about 400 years before the time of Christ. And the writing stopped. That's where what we have in the Bible stopped at that point in the Old Testament. We called it in theology the intertestamental period. And that was between the writings of the Old and the covenant of the New. And of course, we in seminary described, and this is when we studied systematic theology, what we were teaching, what we were believing within the church that we were in. And in our systematic theology, we taught that God manifested himself or revealed himself to man in dispensations or covenants that went along, dispensations of who God was. At the beginning, in the creation, he was the God of power and the God of creation. Then he created mankind and he made a covenant with mankind. And supposedly, according to theology, God had given mankind the ability to have free will, which was the ability to tell God no. But in telling God no, you also heaped upon yourself eternal judgment, which also evolved over the years and was more refined in the New Testament writings. So the Old Testament God is spiteful, jealous, egotistical, angry. Ryan, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. That's who he was in the Old Testament. You look at the first of the 10 Commandments, thou shalt have no other God before me. And the explicit language in the Hebrew of that commandment explicitly described God saying, there are other gods beside me. you choose me. You shall have none of them before you have me. And people always ask the question, is God admitting that there are other gods out there? Or is God saying anything that you would call your God, this little idol, maybe this little thing here I have sitting here. I picked this up at a garage sale, and this sits on my, I have it because I thought it was kind of neat. We never had crucifixes in the Baptist church. That was just not something that we used. But I look at this, and for some people, that is an idol. That is by the way, I got it for $25 too. Look at that. Price tag still on the back. So I got this more than anything to ward off vampires. Anybody out there cringing? So this could be an idol because you would worship the thing as opposed to God. This was, let's say this is another God. I actually have another crucifix here that's very interesting to look at. Hang on. Let me see where I've got it. Let me see if it's over here in my cabinet. If I can get at it. It is. Hang on a second. See if I can get at this while I'm talking and you can hear me at a distance. And here, maybe I could try this. This is what I used to wake up my son some mornings. Hello, can you hear me now? All right, let's see if I can get at this without knocking shit all over the place, because I think it's interesting. Here it is. I got my hands on it. Without knocking shit all over. Okay. This happens to be another crucifix that I had picked up at a garage sale a long time ago. And it looks like this. And hung on a tree, as it said. And this was I got this at Goodwill. See, there's half of the Goodwill label is still on there. Something 99 I paid for that. But there's a crucifix. This was an idol. This could be an idol because you're not worshiping a piece of brass or a piece of wood. You're supposedly worshiping the character, the deity who is depicted there. But many people would worship the thing instead. And these things were known as, these were Elohim. They were gods. The gods of clay, the gods of bronze and gold and wood were known as Elohim. Just like the name God, Elohim. Thou shalt have no other Elohim before me. And then you've got the name of God, Elohim, which really stated that Elohim, the God of many gods. So that's interesting. Hey, Barbie D. Yeah, it is a pretty neat looking thing. Why, thank you, Teresa. It's a shirt I got. It finally came in the mail today. It's different for me. I don't usually wear clingy things. It's got this this kind of fabric that's, clingy. And if I had a 6-pack and a great pecs, it might look better. But you're only seeing this much of it, so I'm okay. And by the way, this is what I wake Flynn up with. I had to get that. Rainey got that for me. Can you hear me now? So I like that. That helps get him up in the morning. That's the only reason I got that. I saw that and I said, I must have that. So, hey, Lewis Boyce, how you doing? Good to see you here tonight. So all of this talk of crucifixes and gods and all of this, there were all these things that God, this is kind of playing off of what Ryan said, that God was a jealous God. He was spiteful. He was egotistical. He was angry a lot. God was pissed off a lot. Did you notice that in the Old Testament? In my great anger and wrath, I will wipe out the world and the sin therein by sending a great flood. And only you, Noah, you'll survive. Or the different things that God did. Adam and Eve sinned, and he casts them out of the garden. He puts an angel, a cherub with a fiery sword at the gates of Eden so they could not enter back in. There was the scene where Moses changed the mind of God. I don't remember the passage. It's somewhere, I believe, in the book of Exodus, where God was so angry with the people. I think it was after the scene with the golden calf, which, by the way, I believe was Hathor, the calf goddess of Egypt. They just come out of Egypt, these people. What did they make? They made Hathor, the calf goddess. Where are they? They're encamped around her mountain. She was the patron goddess in Egypt also of miners and all the copper miners and the turquoise miners out in the wilderness in the Sinai. She was the god of happiness and fertility and the patron goddess of the miners. And so when they said, Moses is up on the mountain and he's gone, and they said to Aaron, build us a god, and they make a golden calf. Well, why are they making a golden calf? Why not a golden turtle? Why not a golden snake? Why not a golden whatever? I think it's because they were at her mountain, which I believe was Serebet el Chedim, and we've talked about that before, the place where Moses was up on the mountaintop and came down with the Ten Commandments. They're at her mountain, and they craft a god for the Israelites, crafting it to look like a golden calf. And that's another story that we can get into another time. But all of this to say is that all of these things were a progression. They were something that you will see reflected in Egyptian history. You see it in Israelite history, in the history of Judaism. You know what I was getting at with that? I think that's the scene where Moses is in front of God, and God said, I'm going to destroy all these people. He's pissed off at Israel. I delivered them, and look how they thank me. They don't worship me. They worship an idol. I'm going to kill every last one of them, Moses, and I'm going to relaunch the covenant, a new dispensation in you and your seed instead of Abraham's seed. And so what happens? What does Moses do? Here's Moses. He's got God telling him, I'm going to restart the whole thing in you. Perhaps Moses sees the volatility of God. Or perhaps that volatility is a word picture that was supposed to be shown to the people to show what God could and couldn't do. I see it as Ryan did as he read it. He sees a God that's very different than the one that's taught in church. And he actually is. He's not the same God they're talking about. There's a difference to him. That dispensation, that new covenant has taken him away from this. By his own word, he's turned his back on that covenant and started anew. But when he tells Moses, I'm going to start the whole thing over in you. I'm going to wipe out Israel. They're gone. They're gone. God, man, gone, bitches, is almost what God was saying. You could see him. Yeah. You want to complain? You want to not worship me? You want to build a golden calf in my place? I'll show you what I can do. I'm going to wipe you all off the face of the earth. What does Moses say? He reminds God of his covenant with Abraham and his covenant with Israel. And he says, God, you can't do that. You would be breaking your word, your covenant. And so the dispensation stood, the covenant stood. And so what does the Bible tell us at that scene? It says, and after God listened to Moses, it says, and God repented of the evil he was going to do to Israel. He repented. He turned his back on. He turned a new leaf. He turned it over. He changed his mind. So you had Moses changing the mind of God. When God was supposed to be the all-powerful, and if he is that all-powerful God that the Old Testament said he could squash me into non-existence in less than a heartbeat right now, this moment, for saying it, because I'm going against, whatever. And of course, what we learned in seminary, he doesn't do that. Why could people stand up and atheists, the famous stories of standing on the soapbox out on the street and going, I defy God, there is no God. And because there is no God, I shake my fist at him. I defy you. If you are real God, you will zap me with a bolt of lightning and wipe me out of existence. There, see, it didn't happen, so he must not exist. And of course, what we believed in our systematic theology was that it's not the nature of God that prevents somebody from being destroyed in a moment like that. It's the grace of God. That it's not God. God could wipe him out. God might be up there stewing at him going, oh, you little MFer, I'm going to wipe you out right now. But I promised grace. And especially in the New Testament era, I've promised grace through faith. And I see you now filtered through the redeeming act of my Son. And that is what we taught in theology. Ooh, I get chills about that. I get chills running up the backs of my arms. This is the stuff that we taught. This is what we believed. That I am that God of the Old Testament, but the only thing that prevents me from squashing you like a bug or sending another flood or wiping you out with fire from heaven and brimstone is the fact that I now see you filtered through the act of the Son. The act of the Son of God, the redeeming act. And so there you go. That's the explanation in dispensation and in covenants from God. So that's what I wanted to get at, was really, and maybe I've spent a lot more time hammering that point home tonight, but the point is that this is who the Egyptians were as well. They had a certain stair step. We called it stair step dispensationalism in seminary, meaning God started here, but then he took a step further out and went up a level. Then a little further out with the next covenant and up a level. A little further out and up a level. And so on. And we got this stair step dispensationalism. And with each step up, God gets further away from his original wrath of God state to that state where he has perfected the grace. The way I heard it once, and I don't see the book here. I got this book many years ago, 30 years ago plus. It was written by Philip Yancey, kind of a Christian apologist, devotional writer. I got it when I was still in the church and so on. And the book is called Disappointment with God. And many of us who grew up in a Judeo-Christian setting have abandoned those things of faith because of our disappointment with God. God ended up not being who I thought he was, or who I was taught he was when I was a kid. He's not the Abba Father in the Aramaic. He's not the Daddy God. If he's the Daddy God, why do so many bad things happen? Setting aside the idea that no is also an answer when you pray. Excuse me, I still have the naggy cough, and it's going to be with me all evening. But we became disappointed with God, and so we walked away from him. I became very disappointed with God, and that began my initial trek away from God, was dealing with disappointments about who I thought he really was, and who I was seemingly starting to understand he really actually was, if he was at all. And so in this book, Disappointment with God, he talks about God in a devotional sense, an apologetic sense. He talks about God being that God who, when he created humanity, he created something he had never created before, and that was something that could tell him no, something that could turn its back on him. In Star Trek, is the character Q supposed to be God? Was Q, to the Picard generation of Star Trek, was he same as the Squire of Gothos? Remember that? The Squire of Gothos in the original series? The same character? The godchild character? And so the big question was, in this book from Philip Yancey, is God somebody who created a thing that he could no longer control because he gave it free will. And the more that mankind expressed free will, God was like a parent, he purported, a parent that had to learn how to deal with its child, or to learn how to deal with its creation. And therefore you saw God in this stair-step dispensationalism. God is more like a watchmaker, says Scott Allen, than a dad. The creator of a great experiment. He, she, it doesn't intervene or play favorites. I think you're right. So why did Jesus say? Is he speaking about God here? Or is he speaking about the ability to manifest? Why did Jesus himself say, he said, where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst. And if you look at this mountain and you say to this mountain, be gone, you can make that mountain into the size of a mustard seed. And he used a mustard seed because it was the tiniest seed that existed. You can remove the mountain as far away from you, or reduce it in size to the size of a mustard seed. Why did Jesus say these things? If we could call on a God and expect that that God could perform those things, not as a marionette of our prayers, but as a God who listened and did and worked in our behalf. That's what we were being taught in Christian theology. Yet I remember, I may have mentioned this example once before, very early on in my adult years, still in my 20s, I was in ministry. I was in youth ministry. And there was a friend of mine who he and his wife had given birth to their twin babies. And they were born very sickly, and they were not expected to survive a day. And it dragged on for a few days. And the whole church, I was living in Detroit at the time, and it was a church where I had worked with the youth prior to moving to Detroit. And I remember that whole church came out and camped out at that hospital, and they all had prayer vigils for the saving of the lives of these babies. And of course, in the outcome, what happened? The babies died, and they were not saved. And you had everybody there, they brush themselves off and they justify it through faith, saying, God said, no, this is what I'm going to do. There's a purpose for this. And that's how they justified the death. And I started, even back then in my 20s, I began to think, can we really change the course of God's mind? Can we call on a great divine, a great deity, to change the course of natural action? And I thought, maybe this was just supposed to be this way. This is the way it is. This is the way the world is. And I started to see myself almost as a practical deist, like our founding fathers were all deists in this country. And so I started to begin to believe that it didn't matter how much effort and prayer, faithful, righteous, was it Jesus or was it Paul in the New Testament said, the fervent, effectual prayer of a righteous person avails much, he said. And that's where Jesus said, you can say to the mountain to be moved, if you have the faith of a grain of mustard seed. That's what it is. And so I began to, even in my 20s, question whether or not God was actually there at my behest to change something. Then I was told, well, you just didn't have enough faith. And I said, doesn't God already get that? Didn't he create the finite mind of mankind, of humanity? He created that. He already knows our limitations in comprehending who or what he might be. It's the written history of the Bible. is humanity's, or at least as focused on the tribe of Israel, the nation of Israel. It's the whole story of how they constantly were showing how finite their thinking was, because they could not latch into this infinite thinking of the God. And I thought, does God not get it? If the universe fell from his fingertips, like we were taught, does he not have the ability to understand the finite, free nature of the creatures he created? And so this was one of the first times where that really hit me and really made sense to me. And I kept it kind of quiet, and I just kind of drifted away eventually from my faith. And that was one of the first rudimentary things that happened on a faith level, was the praying for these twin babies and finding that it doesn't matter how righteous my prayer is, or how often I pray it, or how often I believe by faith that I don't have to plead with God, but just put it out there. I'm not going to change things sometimes. And so I thought that contradicts what I was taught about the nature of prayer and the nature of God. And I stopped praying at that point. And I don't have a definitive moment when I stopped praying in my experience, but that's the story that comes up in my mind from my early to mid 20s. And so if that story comes up in my mind, I think that's probably where my brain started to find it flailed with the ideas. Wesley says, I failed Jesus by doing magic, wizardry, witchcraft, and sorcery. The spinning counterclockwise of the circles made only for cutting in the vision of Jesus showed me. It's interesting. Earlier, Wesley said, Jesus showed me a black shoe on the foot. It means why. Whoever wore it and did not let why go. And why about the vision is cut off. So this is interesting stuff to me. And of course, we're talking about early Egyptian theology. And this really came out of trying to describe the way we see God, the way we've gone from seeing the God of the mountain and the sky and the stars to seeing the God who is the Abba Father, the loving, caring, my arms are open wide to you. There was a song that we used to sing in church, and I performed this once at church in a worship service. It was done by the group Harvest back in the 80s. It's an old Christian song. It says, you'll see a man acquainted with your sorrows. You'll see his arms or his eyes sharing in your tears. You'll see his arms never lost their hold on you. So lift your eyes. You'll see the Lord. That was one of the songs we sang, a worship song. You'll see a man acquainted with your sorrows. And I think those are the things that draw people to God even now. They want a God that's acquainted with who they are and where they are. And so we've changed the nature of probably of who he really is. There's another song that I had done in church, and we sang this with the youth. That just popped into my mind, so I've got to say it. I've got to remember how the lyrics went. It said, hang on a second, I got to think of this. It was sung by by Wayne Watson, I think, and it was, would I know you now if you walked into the room? If you stilled the crowd, if your light dispelled the gloom, or if I saw your wounds and touched your thorn-pierced brow, I wonder, would I know you now? Would I know you now if you walked into this place? would I would I have made you proud, or would my life be a disgrace? Or would I I can't remember how it goes, but then it goes into, it says, but have the images I've painted of you, he's talking to God, have the images I've painted so distorted who you are that even if the world was looking, they could not see you, the real you? Have I changed the true reflection to fulfill my own design, making you what I want, not showing you forth divine? Now, those are big questions that we have to ask ourselves. And I asked it from the other side around when I was younger. Now I asked, have we made God who we want God to be to fulfill our needs, as opposed to who God really is? But then you also run headlong into the block wall of, how do we know exactly who God really is? Well, it's right here in the Bible, and God's... I know it's there, but that is the theology of the book. How do we know that's who God really is, truly is? Why do we see what looks like the gaping holes? And I think if I can bring this back around without just camping on that side issue, I think this is the way the Egyptians were, because they were people just like we are. They had their questions about God and gods, and they created these gods to fit their needs. They wrote all these solemnic hymns to their gods. They created entertaining stories about their gods. But yet there's no canonical version of any of these myths that tie them all together. You saw their gods appeared in all these artworks and incantations and scribal writings on papyrus and carvings on temples, tombs, and shrines. And you could see that from the early dynastic period and onward. Information from religious sources in Egyptian history is really limited by the system of traditional restrictions on what they could describe and depict. The murder of the god Osiris, for instance, never is explicitly described in Egyptian writing. It's just a story that's out there about the god. And the Egyptians believed that words and images could affect reality. So they avoided the risk of making negative events real. So the conventions of Egyptian art were also very poorly suited for portraying whole narratives about these gods. So most myth-related artwork consists of these sparse, individualistic scenes, rather than a full, cogent story about who this god was. Now, of course, we have these full stories about God in the Old and New Testament. Hey, Dave Potter. Good to see you. I saw you just popped in. And sorry if there's a big lag between the show and what shows up in the chat room. I did not think I had this set on any kind of slow thing. So again, I fall back on my moderators to see if you have the ability to change that if it's going too slow. Matthew Sainsbury said the Ankh was the symbol of life. This is true. Wesley said it happened to all, but I had told the vision and was not touched by Satan that night. Not today, Satan. There's a t-shirt over at my Etsy page. You can get that. Nothing special about it. A million people say it. All kinds of shirts around about it. But if you want one from this program, it's a black shirt with the words on it. Not today, Satan. You can go get that at my Etsy page. It's there. Scott Allen said, I'm concerned about that cough. You know, this cough, I picked it up from my son about a week and a half ago. Almost 2 weeks ago now. And he's still coughing. We don't have COVID. if that's what your concern is, Scott Allen, we don't have COVID. My daughter picked it up, but they're younger, so it affects them differently. Me, because I've been a smoker in my past, that coughing is more exacerbated at times. So, but there you go. Thank you for your concern on that, though, Scott Allen. I appreciate it. Just a little cove. Don't worry about it, folks. He'll be fine. Oh, Dave Potter says, thank you. Yeah, it's a little cough. It's nothing major going on with me. I've been into my doctor. I went into my doctor about this cough about a week ago. There was something that made me wonder if it had anything to do with my heart or if it was affecting my heart about a week ago, because I would get really sore on the left side of my chest, and I was in the midst of this major coughing. And even now I can go for hours and not a cough, and then all of a sudden I exacerbate my throat and I'll start coughing. I'll do it. I've been talking for an hour, so my cough is going to act up a bit. But I went into my doc. I said, is there anything wrong with me? And I said, I know it's not COVID. And they said, no, it's not COVID. Did their testing and all of that. And when I had COVID, it didn't affect me on a respiratory level anyway, back in January. And so, I went and checked it out. Scott Allen, thanks for your concern, and anybody else. It's a dumb cough, and it's hanging on. You ask Dave Potter. He's known me forever. I've had a cough for about 25 years, just a mild cough. I've got a good friend of mine. He's, 15, 16 years older than I am. He's had a cough for years, and he had to have some treatments done. And it's not cancer, and it's not anything else. So blah, 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 blah. So thank you for your concern is all I'm saying. Sharing the pipe with Sam. Yeah, I don't think you have COVID. That's so 2020. Isn't that the truth? It's so 2020. I went to the hospital today, and it had signs up all over at the hospital. I had a podiatrist appointment for my feet. And because I have that neuropathy that comes with diabetes, where your feet numb up a little bit. So I went and had a bunch of tests done and all that. And they said, you're doing all right. Here's what we can do. They said, we can put you on drugs, which will do this, or you can do this programming, and it's all gut related and how you eat and all that. And I said, you know what? I'm so over adding more pharmaceuticals to my list. Let's skip that and let's go the other route. And so we're going to go through that. And hopefully they say even my neuropathy is reversible, which would be nice. So it would be nice to have my feet not feel like I'm wearing a pair of socks when I'm barefoot some days. And other days it doesn't feel that way. It's up and down. So not that you need to know all that, but so I went to the doc today, and nobody seems to be too concerned about my health. My diabetes blood is doing well. It's lower than it has been, the blood sugar content. So it's coming along. I'm still fat and out of shape, but that's coming. It's coming. We'll get it taken care of. Thank you, Corey. Didn't see you sneak in there. How you doing, brother? Good to see you. So, and I mean, I'm still, I'm not where I should be in shape. I mean, you look at me now. Dave Potter knows me. He knows how I'm shaped, and he knows all that. My wife, Rainey, does. But, I'm 260 pounds. I'd like to be 210 pounds. And if I was at 210 pounds, you wouldn't believe how lean and gaunt I would probably look. But I carry my weight differently. And if I got that down, health comes and all that. And that's all an aside. Wow. Got into talking about health issues and weight. Sorry about that. But, we're pretty much didn't get through any material that I wanted to get through tonight. I wanted to talk about the Ogdoad. Who the hell are the Ogdoad? The Ogdoad, the four couples, these divine deity couples who comprise the first beings in the universe, according to Egyptian mythology. And it's the number 8 is associated with them, the four couples. And it really began being defined by the Gnostics. And so we'll have to kind of hit that tomorrow night. And the way Gnosticism, or I'm sorry, the way the Ogdoad are described in Egyptian history and Egyptian myth. And so we'll get to that. And I want to talk a little bit more. I was supposed to get tonight to cosmology, the cosmology of Mot in the Egyptian word, the shape of the world, time, linear time, the creation myths with the Ogdoad, and the reign of the sun god and Osiris myth and so on. That was all on the docket for tonight. We're going to have to hit that tomorrow night. And so you can see at the rate I rabbit trail myself on this show that we'll probably get through this whole series on the Egyptian gods by this time next year at the rate I'm going. So I appreciate your being here and listening. Let's see. What did Wesley say about weed? Oh, weed's under them. I fail you. When I fail you, I fail Jesus by not getting involved. It's interesting. You saw palm trees in your dream, in the vision. Jesus showed me on the right side of the valley, top leaves were dark green, bottom leaves orange, red, centers in the dark green palm leaves, and so on. Wesley, I'm going to have you on the show again one of these days, and we'll talk about your vision. I think that would make a great story to listen to. And folks, I have confirmed with my friend Andy, my Lemon Squad guy. He's going to come on the show on Sunday morning and talk a little bit about his background. And I've talked about him. Dave knows Andy. We don't all have the same experience with Andy. We've had our ups and downs with Andy, but Andy's going to be on the show and talk a little bit about his background and what he brings to the table. And I'm hopefully going to get an author, a children's author, who wrote a children's book and illustrated it called Oh My Gods. And it's kind of the history of religion. I made that offer to him. We were talking online in one of the Facebook children's authors and illustrators groups that I'm part of. And I made the invite to him. So we'll see what happens. I don't think I've heard back from him on that yet. And so there you go. All right. That's all we got for tonight. We're going to call it quits. I want to thank you all for being here. Become a member, join the chat room, or join this channel if you'd like. It'd be nice. It'd be nice to have you. And you guys have a good night, and you go into your Friday tomorrow. If it's the last day of the work week for you, well, congrats and have a good day with it. And so I appreciate you all being here. And of course, I have to end on a cough. So thanks for being here. We'll see you again tomorrow night. And keep in mind, remember, live long and prosper.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.